Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the Department of Justice's lawsuit against New York for ostensibly interfering with the federal government's crackdown on illegal immigration. Let me just start with the way this was announced. You have the new Attorney General, Pam Bondi, making a big deal of we're suing New York. It wasn't even clear when you heard it whether or not they were bringing civil or criminal charges. They are civil. And the case itself, when you look at it, does not match up to the really overheated rhetoric. And I would say more. The overheated rhetoric is a really bad sign about this attorney general and the politicization of the department, and in particular, the politicization along the talking points lines of Donald Trump. She gets up and does all this sort of new sheriff in town about New York is interfering with federal immigration, and there's a new day, a new cop on the beat. This is a new DOJ. We are taking steps to protect Americans. Millions of illegal aliens with violent records have flooded into our communities. No proof about that at all. I'm sure they can't make that happen or substantiate that in their complaint. Bringing violence and deadly drugs with them. It's just not the way you bring, especially a civil lawsuit against another sovereign. And speaking of another sovereign, by the way, they did this against Illinois. Now, it's very clear that they've named the governor, the attorney general, the very people who have plagued Donald Trump with the civil suits against the Trump organization. They call it New York Bondi's worthless, politically driven lawsuit. I'll get to the merits in a second, but just point number one is the grandstanding, the nastiness of the new attorney general and the allegations fired against New York without even, it's one thing to do it against a criminal defendant with all kinds of information and evidence in a complaint. I don't think that's what we have here. What do we have here? We have New York's green light law, and that law says you can get a driver's license even if your status is illegal, even if you're in the country without full papers. And New York is not the only state by far to do that, but their basic notion is, we need this for safety. The alternative is telling them they can't, having them drive on the roads without insurance, without any kind of testing as to their safety, etc. This is an important part of New York state health and safety. And that's why we do it. Now, what the federal government wants is all the information about people from the DMV, including their immigration status. And part of the law is we're going to require people who are here without full status to get driver's licenses. But we're going to tell them that when you do it, we're not going to turn over this information to other authorities. That happens in other instances all the time. States decide what to do with their law enforcement information. It's that very decision that now Pam Bondi, in a swaggering, high-handed way, says is absolutely interfering with the enforcement of federal law. And now there's a new sheriff in town. And how so? Because they're not just giving up the information because the law says they won't. Can the feds get the information? Yes, they can. They just need to get a warrant. And to get a warrant, you need to show some kind of reason that the person you're getting the warrant of might give some evidence, so they just can't willy-nilly knock on doors, etc. So they are constrained, but that's the way this program and many others operates. Moreover, we're going to see what New York, which is very well represented legally, its Solicitor General in particular is really top notch, is going to say. But I think that Bondi is going right into a buzzsaw here of law that has been established over the last 20 or 30 years by the Supreme Court. And it's part of a conservative hobby horse saying you can't just boss states around. So what they're really saying is state people should have to come and give us this information, remove any impediments. And in a series of cases, the U.S. Supreme Court has said you can't commandeer, you can't tell states what to do. So, if the feds are coming in or they have a legal basis for looking at the immigration status of an individual and they've gotten a warrant or whatever they need legally, if New York governor throws herself across the doorpost and says, you can't come in here, okay, you could argue now they're interfering with the execution and enforcement of federal law. But what she is saying, again, in this very high-handed manner, is that by just enacting a law like other jurisdictions do to let people without full status get driver's license, they are interfering with federal enforcement. And I think the argument will be she's not sophisticated legally, Pam Bondi, but I think the argument's going to be that the law that says you can get a driver's license and will protect the information is preempted by federal law. I don't think that's an easy argument. Though they really have to show a pretty strong overlap. And I think especially where the rubber hits the road here is they think they're entitled to get all this information without a warrant. And the New York lawyers are going to stand up and say they can get it like anyone else. They need a warrant, or, any law enforcement could get it. You need a warrant, and telling us we just have to turn it over, that's a violation of all these 10th Amendment cases involving commandeering. So at a minimum, to me, it's a dicey lawsuit. Fine. They want to be aggressive in their new immigration policies. I mean, I don't say fine, but that's a policy prerogative. But this standing up and really just trashing New York as if it's supposedly harboring, criminals in City Hall and keeping the feds from making things safe is A, bullshit, and B, really legally out of line and doesn't describe what the situation is in a way that will really matter, I think, for whether or not it is lawful. So we'll see what happens when New York responds, but I'll end where I started, which is this was not the case where any attorney general with respect for the law, respect for federalism, respect for partners in the system, which you work with all the time, had any business getting up and treating New York, another sovereign, as some kind of tawdry lawbreaker. And it is a bad harbinger among several now for Pam Bondi's tenure and what she's doing to the Department of Justice. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.